Hello everybody, so welcome back to another installment of Student Saturday. So Isaac introduced our amazing guest.
Yeah, so today is my dad and Gavin's godfather, and his name is James Gray. He was an alumni of Suncoast Sound and Spirit of Atlanta, and he was a tech at Countryside High School as well as a couple other high schools in the Florida area. And yeah, so if you want to tell us some stories to start us off, or if you want to jump right into questions, it's up to you.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys taking the time and bringing me onto your show. I'm just an old guy with a lot of stories, as Isaac and Gavin knows. I'm also a youth director at a church, and I also teach karate as well. So I have a lot of fun doing that. Stories. As far as what, like, I can tell you when I first started in '93, I didn't start my my drum career, I guess, if you want to call it that, until '93, my junior year of high school. I was getting picked on as a freshman and as a sophomore, and I found, a drum line, and they were like, "Hey, come out." One of my friends was like, "Come out and try it out," and I tried out for bass drum, and loved it. Thought it was great. And then all of a sudden, once you're a part of that type of community, no one messes with you or picks on you. They all pretty much leave you alone. And especially a drum line who are all guys, beating drum heads with sticks. I mean, they're always willing to get in a fight for you as well. So not that I'm condoning that in any way. But that's how I started off. And then my drum corps career, I started with Suncoast Sound in '93. After my junior year of high school, I couldn't believe my parents let me go and march after my first year of marching band. And I went on the road. I was a percussion guy in the front, and playing drums and cymbals and about everything else you can think of. And I had a blast doing that ever since. So yeah, I don't know if there's any other stories you want me to tell or anything that you had in mind.
Yeah, so you said you started in '93 in just like a high school drum line?
Yeah, I marched, my high school was Land O'Lakes High School, and I had moved during middle school from Tampa to Land O'Lakes. And, I don't know how you guys are where you are, but for me, moving to Land O'Lakes, it's kind of like a clique. So if you're not born there, it's kind of hard to fit in. And so, when one of my friends was like, "Hey, a drum line, come and try it," I had no interest in drumming or anything. Actually, I was in a bowling league, which is, kind of embarrassing and geekish, but I was, 14th in the state at one time and in state competition. And then, music sang to me. Once I started getting into the drums, then I started like really wanting to learn more. And that's how I got into drum corps and learning like Crossman and Cavaliers and, all these drum corps. And then, I remember in '93, even though we're a little Division II-III corps, I'm sure like you guys, when you watch some of your favorite drum corps and you get to see them in the parking lot, you're just in awe, I remember watching, I had the honor of watching Blue Devils in '94. It was finals night, and the instructors allowed us just a few members of my corps to come in the middle of the circle, and that's how I learned about circular breathing for trumpet players and other horn players, and I've always just had an appreciation for that. And it wasn't just watching just drums, which I was into. It was watching the color guard. It was watching the horn line, marching instructors, just figuring out how this whole thing kind of came together. And it was just incredible to watch. And I was obviously blown away, and my face was peeled off when Blue Devils were hitting the high notes, and it was pretty amazing. So,
yeah. So obviously, I mean, over time, a culture of any activity is going to develop a lot. So being back then, experiencing the earlier stages of drum corps, obviously not like the very beginning, but still, would you say that drum corps really like hit its movement and like found what it was in a sense in like the 2000s or the 90s, or when would you say?
I don't know. I was actually reading marching Suncoast Sound, you obviously, and I have my favorite drum corps throughout the years. I mean, obviously mine are probably going to be a little bit older to when I marched as well, but I I have others that I love as well, earlier or recent ones. But I was reading an article on Suncoast Sound in '85, and they were kind of experimenting in a way with doing original music, which now is, you see a lot of original music through Drum Corp. But in '85, Florida Suite was the name of the show, and it was all original music. So the instructors were talking about, how hard it was going to be for the judges to judge it, because they can't just go put a record player on, put the record on, listen to it, and then go to the show and judge it. It was completely different. It was new. Is that supposed to sound that way? I think the 2000s, sorry, excuse me. I think the 2000s really brought a whole newness to the organization with, starting to put electronics in and starting to really play around with sounds around the field. That's one thing, for the older days, you had the screamers, and that's what they were in the 70s and the 80s. Then you got to the 90s, the 80s and 90s, and that's where they really tried to experiment with being on the field with a lot more movement. And you could hear a show and be dead center and be like, that's the best show ever. And then you could go to that same show a week later and be at the 30-yard line up a little bit and go, I'm not sure that's the best show there is, because the experience and the sound is so different. I think now when you go to a show, you can hear it. And if the trumpet player is on the, on the left side on the 20, and he's like, back at the second hash, I mean, you're like, wow, I can hear him from all the way to the other side because of, the electronics and everything, and still get to experience the same thing that other people are experiencing in a different area. So it definitely has changed for the better, in the 2000s and everything.
So unless Owen has another comment.
Yeah, just talking more about the progression, evolution of culture and all that. So you said it was a change for the better. Do you think that it's going to keep evolving, and do you think it's going to keep evolving for the better?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll keep evolving. Sometimes I'll go to a show, and you know how it is for most of you guys, if you've gone to a show and the electronics don't work, and it's still a great show, but the electronics are a part of that now. So if you take everything and surround it by those electronics with a whole bunch of awesome players, and the electronics fail, there's a question of, did the show fail at that point? Do you score the same, And I don't know how you judge it in today's system when something like that happens. But I do know that when if you're talking about Blue Devils, in the older days, playing in an arc, playing that music, and you're like, wow, that's incredible. And then they do it today, it really hasn't changed. The music is different, the score is different, but the electronics and adding on to that, I think, makes it a better experience for everyone. Now the question is, will it evolve? Yeah, I think it will eventually. I think you'll start maybe having more woodwinds, and the vote for what I heard this year has been the closest it's ever been to have woodwinds in. I know some people are, going crazy about that, and I completely understand that because then it kind of turns into a marching band show at that point, just professional marching band. And DCI has done a heck of a job trying not to make that the case. But when you start seeing Winter Drumline, and then you had originally Winter Guard, then Winter Drumline comes in, and then now we have Wind Lines. They're doing stuff as well during winter.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I think you're always going to see that change. There's always going to be something added. Do I think it's for the better? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I am open to it. Believe me, I am open to the fact of seeing how this. When I was marching in the 80s. I never could have expected that Drum Corps would be like this, the way it is right now. And I'm so happy that it is, because I get to enjoy it with my old friends, and I get to enjoy it with my son, and with people that have really been able to see the transformation over the years.
Yeah.
This is Mitchell. Mitchell seems eager, so go on ahead.
Yes. I know I do know that you marched Suncoast Sound, and then you said you marched Spirit of Atlanta That's actually one of the corps I'm actually thinking about looking at as well. Spirit of Atlanta.
Okay.
What made you move to Spirit of Atlanta from Suncoast, or was it that Suncoast disbanded?
Well, Suncoast did disband. When I marched '93, it was the worst experience I've ever had in marching a drum corps. Right, and it wasn't because of the corps itself. It was just because I was new to the activity.
Right.
I dated the drum captain, or the drum instructor's daughter. Don't ever do that. That's the dumbest thing ever to do. I just had a season that was just riddled with issues. And then also I wanted to be a marching battery, and I was in the front lines with the pit, and I loved it, and I learned so much. But I came away from that season going, man, I'm not sure I want to do this again. Leading into '94, which I went to one camp to try it out, ended up getting on tenors. We had a 5-member tenor line, and I just grooved with every single one of them. They were all just from different places. I had Texas, Georgia, Alabama. And I was like, wow, these people are so cool. Loved my instructors. They were awesome. I had a Crossman guy from 91, 92. In 93, his name was Mark Smith, and he was the snare player for Crossman for years. And he just had this vibe about him that was just unbelievable. So I went to 94, marched. I was like, I love this. This is great. 95 comes around. My parents look at me and said, there is absolutely no way we are paying for you to do drum corps this year. Because there were some things within the mix that just wasn't vibing.
Oh, I know. I completely understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in 95, I didn't go. Midway through the season, my friend called me up. She said she was at a bus stop somewhere, I don't know what state it was, and said that Suncoast had dismembered and she was on her way home. Her parents were driving there to pick her up. And I remember being so thankful in a way that I didn't march that year, because then I would have been in the same predicament. I would have had the rest of my year and my summer just gone.
Yeah.
But luckily that was the start of Suncoast. A lot of Suncoast members going to Spirit, and Spirit that year in '95. If you look, their snare line is huge, their tenor line is huge, and they have like a 12 or 13 member cymbal line. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, so a lot of my friends were like, in '96, they were like, you need to come and march Spirit. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do drum corps anymore, to be honest with you. And but I went to a camp because I knew the corps director. And I started, I got on bass, and I was third bass, which I love third bass. I think that's the best bass spot ever is third. But that's just my opinion. And it was just a lot of fun, even though we had a lot of that season was a horrible season as well, but not because of, it was just because of things just happening left and right, losing members. Our snare line went down 2 weeks before finals. We went down to 3 bass drum players.
Oh God.
And so I had to take on bass 4 and bass 5 parts. And then we picked up a fourth, a brother of one of the snare members, came in the week before finals, and he learned the entire book in a couple of days. And he was a real cool guy, and he did great. But it was just a horrible experience then in '96, just because of things that kind of happened.
Right.
A lot of kids don't share water. I tell you that, water bottles. People get mono and all kinds of other stuff, and then I went back in '97, had a blast, and then '98, my age out year, was the best experience. I could have probably marched another corps, but for me, it's the music.
Yeah.
Spirit has that music that's an entertaining show.
Oh yeah.
If I give you the list of my shows, you look at them and go, well, that corps placed third, or that corps placed second, or maybe they placed fourth. And the reason being is because I love being entertained, and I love entertaining. Mm-hmm. And even though I don't think I was the most technical player, I think entertaining crowds and playing music that you love is the most important thing. You can go to any corps, but as long as you really truly believe in what they do and you really love the music they're doing, that's the most important thing.
That's kind of me with cadets right now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you gotta march. You gotta march where your heart kind of takes you. But you know what, the music you really love. And I'll be honest, in '98, I was seriously contemplating going to cadets.
Yes, sir.
It was and actually, me and another buddy learned their tenor break in '98. Throughout the road, we would learn little pieces and put it together, and then would play it, and then would play it, and we would just laugh. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know that we did talk about drum corps being like completely different today. I want to hear some of your favorites. Let's go like top 2-3 shows and corps from like this current time period.
Oh, well, I mean, Isaac and Gavin know I love Blue Coats right now. I think their shows are just stellar right now. I think entertainment-wise, I mean, I love Sessions. What was it, Sessions 50? Okay, there you go. And I can remember the names. Tilt is another great one that I love.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and, you know, if we're talking current, Upside Down. Blue Coats is definitely a favorite. Spirit, obviously, I know it's my core, but their last year's show was just, you know, the continuation is just amazing.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I really think that it was cool. I mean, the past 2 years have been super cool. I got to see them at a show this year. It was pretty awesome. They were in Central Indiana for like a week, and I got to go out and see them. And that was hype.
Oh yeah, and you know, SCV. Believe me, I mean that is a great show. I don't think it's in my top shows, but it is definitely an awesome show. When you start to listen to it more and actually look at it more, it's great. You know, Crossman with Valkyrie was pretty.
I love Valkyrie.
Yeah, I mean you know, they've done some amazing stuff with their drum corps over the years, and it's great to see them keep moving up. The cores I used to love that I don't love as much right now, only because I don't know, they just haven't been hitting it for me lately. I love Cavaliers. I think they're awesome. They have some of my favorite shows over the years, especially with Planets, and you know, they've done some incredible things. But over the years, them and you know, some of the other cores I used to really love are just kind of moving down a little bit. Phantom's another one I used to love watching, and now they just haven't hit anything for me for a while. But you know, that's the great thing. I mean, cores, you know, you have one core that is not doing the best that they are at that moment, or they just haven't found their niche. And then all of a sudden, after a couple of years, they move up, and that other core that you were really into, you're like, oh, they're there, but this one is really, you know. And so, I mean, that's the great thing about drum corps, to be able to watch. You know, for most of you guys that don't know, Carolina Crown, we used to march in the same division as them. They were 2-3 back in the day.
Oh, really?
And when I marched Suncoast, Carolina Crown was Division 2-3. They were on the bottom tier. And then over the years, I had a buddy that marched with them. And when they finally broke into that finals, which I think, I can't remember exactly what year it was, 99 or something.
Something like that.
Yeah. It was amazing. And then to see them keep doing these things, you know, is just amazing. I mean, crown shows are awesome as well. And it's been awesome to see them grow.
Yeah.
You know, Blue Stars be able to grow. They were Division 2-3, a very low academy at one point, even though they're, you know, they were growing. So.
So you said you preferred entertainment over technicality, right? When it comes to a show?
Yes. It can't be cheesy. And it's got to be somewhat clean. But yeah, I mean, I am definitely, you know, with the music that I love, you know, that's probably why I love Blue Coats. I love more jazz and things like that. You know, where there are other people that like more of the, you know, symphonic or orchestral type of music, which I completely understand. My son's laughing right now because he's that type of person, I think. But yeah, I'm more of the entertainment, the you know, the jazz type part or the big band stuff and things like that. But that doesn't mean that I won't give it up for those shows that are a little bit more technical and doing things that are just right on. Like I said, Cavaliers was one of my favorite cores. And for me, they're very intricate, and they don't do a lot of jazz or anything like that. But I can still respect them as a core and still love their shows, you know.
Yeah, so talking about the 2019 season, how do you feel about Blue Devils winning first over Blue Coats?
I've always loved Blue Devils, but I will say this. Over the years, I've become a bigger fan of Blue Coats than Blue Devils. And I don't know, maybe it's just because, like I said, it's more jazzy and stuff. I love their music. But, wins and losses, you take it. Everyone wants to be number one, but that doesn't mean the top six aren't incredible cores in their own rights. So then you look at those cores, you're like, oh man, they could have been the best if they just had this or just had this. But I think a core, when you it's the funny thing when you march, it's like watching a football game and you're like, man, if that guy just done this, and it's like, well, then you go do it. If you go do it, you're going to see it's really different. And it's the same thing with Drum Corp. Once you go to march and you start getting in there and you do a full season from top to bottom, from every days when you get in there to the your last time on the field, there's so much going on, and these little tweaks that instructors are doing, they're trying to do for you to so you can be the best at what you're doing at that time. And it's sometimes the luck of the draw. Does the crowd really love what you're doing at that time because somebody was smart enough to put that in? Or if you put it in and it wasn't right, or maybe the section is not strong enough to support it, that just happens with it, especially when we're talking about an organization that just keeps evolving. You see these new things like cadets doing the tenors in 2000 on the stands and running around them and playing at that time. We've seen stuff like that, but never with a tenor line, and that was new. And what if that didn't go well with the crowd? Would that have cost them, what they won that year? So, I think there's just ups and downs with it, unfortunately. I think that's just the kind of the way it goes.
So, we've talked about how you the cores you've liked over the years and how drum corps change. So, every core they have little rivalry between each core. So I'm gonna ask you, back then when you were in drum corps with Suncoast or Spirit of Atlanta, who were your main rival groups?
Okay, well, in 97 finals, 97 and 98 finals was in Florida, and it was at what used to be the Citrus Bowl, is now Camping World Stadium or something like that. And we had a core that we were battling with back and forth. They were called Les Etoiles, a Canadian corps. And we were practicing to make it to a semifinals, which in 97 would be a first for us in a very long time for the corps. And for a corps just coming back, the corps had taken a break in 94, I think it was, or 95, no, 94. And they were just coming back into their own. So to make it back into semifinals was a big deal. And we kept fighting against this corps. Well, the day before semifinals, the corps decided that they were going to give, Les Etoiles decided to give their corps a break. They got on buses and started heading out to the beach. And as they're in the buses, they're screaming at us and laughing at us as the buses are passing by, while we're going to the field to march until the wee hours of the night to prepare for the next day. So, which was fine. We were okay with that. Well, the next day we went and competed, and we took semifinals, and they didn't. So we just edged them out. And I don't know if that's really a rivalry, but I know at the time that was the biggest battle that I wanted to win at that time, was to beat that corps that was, oh, we got this in the bag. We're just going to go have a holiday in Florida, That's why I always believe, with certain organizations like Tarpon and other organizations, they're there to work. You're there until you can't do anymore. You're going to bust your butt. Can I say butt on this? Is that okay?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to bust your hiney until you do everything you need to do, until your last step on that field. So that was one. in '94, we used to have this drum beat for cadets, color guard girls that would walk past us. So when we would warm up, we would stop, and then we play this drum beat, and then the girls would laugh. But word got back to the cadets drum line, and they weren't exactly happy about it. And so, you know, then they shaved their heads, and then, or we decided to shave our heads, and then they shaved their heads. So there was little things like that, you know, back and forth. So, you know, but I wouldn't say there was a lot of rivalries. You know, Magic of Orlando was a corps that we teamed up with in '94, and you know, we combined all of our food one night to make this awful goulash. But it was food, so we didn't care. So it was kind of cool spending the time with them and being able to, you know, take off the drums, take off the uniforms, and just hang out with other corps and be able to discuss things with them and how their experiences are. And I think a lot of drum corps do that now. You know, Troopers, I think, was another one we used to hang out with every so often. Spirit was another one with Suncoast, even though they were just coming back into their own and stuff. And so, you know, I don't think there were too many rivalries. You know, I don't remember getting any fights or anything like that. You know, it wasn't like West Side Story or anything. So.
Or Boston back in the day.
No benches clearing or anything like that.
No, I don't. Not that I'm aware of. Everyone was pretty respectful of each other. Everyone wanted to be the best, and I think, you know, regardless of what division you were, and even if you were the 18th or 19th Corps, you still took it seriously because it was your marching season. You still wanted to beat the next, you know, the next Corps up. It's like, who are we chasing? This is the one we're chasing. Let's chase them. But it was never like, well, I'm gonna take a sticks to your knees and try to cause you not to march so I can get that extra point. You know, it was never anything like that. You know.
Jaelyn, you can go on ahead.
I mean, I know we all have those rivalries. We all have that one group that seem to butt heads with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I'm trying to think of you know, who it might have been at the time, but nothing is really coming to mind. I mean, when you're out there marching, and you know, some of you guys have seen it, and some of you guys are starting to experience it. You know, when you're there and you're marching, and you're like, you get to your show site, and you get your stuff on, you get your gear on, and you go and get out on that field, and you perform the absolute best show that you can perform. And then you get back to your trucks, and then you unload your gear, and you go to a retreat if there is a retreat. We love that there was never a retreat. Sometimes there weren't retreats because we'd hurry up and go to the gas station or the Quickie Mart or go out to Dairy Queen and get some food and then go back to the buses. Drum major retreats were the best, okay? But when we couldn't do that, you had to go back go back on the fields, have your stuff on, do your thing, play off. You know, and then it was about loading your stuff to the truck so you can get back on the bus so you can go to your next site, get off at 3 a.m. and unload your stuff, get in the gym, sleep until 7, wake up, do another. So the everyday part of the drum corps experience, it kind of takes away from those type of things with rivalries sometimes, or even caring about one, because you have to be thinking about what your next move is, you know, because when you're out there, you're only responsible for yourself. You're not responsible for, well, I mean, you're responsible for the people you march with, but for the most part, you know, if you're late to wake up, that's on you. If you didn't get food before you went out to marching basics, that was on you. If you didn't drink enough water and you passed out from dehydration, that was on you. And, you know, that's something that you don't do in high school. It's completely different from high school marching band, you know. Once you start, you know, getting out there, it's like, holy moly, I am on my own. I had no idea, you know. I had an instructor throw drumsticks at my head one time. And I couldn't call mom and dad and say, hey, the instructor threw marching sticks at my head, you know. And that was also the instructor whose daughter I dated. Like I said, it's never a good idea. And but, you know, you had those things. So rivalries are kind of, you know, it's kind of hard sometimes. I mean, you do have, you know, I think it was more of, for me, it was more of like, who do I want to be most like, or who do I want to beat? You know, and Magic at the time when I was marching Spirit, I respected the heck out of them. But I'll be honest to tell you, I was looking to see what they were doing, and I was like, how do I get better than them? So.
Okay, so I'll hand it off to Jaelyn now since she little texted me, but go on ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, do you have a favorite memory that you look back on?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of favorite memories. One of my favorite memories was my age out year in '98. Just the aging out process, going out onto the field, and they used to allow you to take momentums and put them out on the field, and this year they decided not to do it. And well, my court got a little upset. Our age outs got a little upset. We decided to do it anyway. And we made a delta in the middle of the field as the people, the announcers are telling us to leave the field. We're making this huge delta, and we're all just with our hands up like this. And somebody took a picture. I love it. It's awesome. Of just me up like this with the delta right in the middle and stuff. And I remember, with 5 years of marching drum corps, that feeling of there was nothing else that I could do. I did everything I was supposed to do. When I first started, I didn't understand the importance of practicing and working hard at my craft. Then I started to recognize that in 97, 94 and then 97 more. And then, so that was a good memory. I had a good cry that night, I think, knowing I couldn't do anything else that I'd done before. Another memory of mine is, working with Mark Thurston. And for those of you who don't know, Mark Thurston was the drum caption head for Crossman for years. My favorite years, which was like 90, 91, 92, and 93. And he became the arranger for Spirit in 98. So to be able to play a Thurston book for me was, that would be like playing Tom Unk's book or any of these, Scott Johnson's book or anybody, somebody you admire for so long. And to be able to play his music or his arrangement was just incredible for me. So that's another great memory of mine. And then probably the other ones were I became the most outstanding percussionist for Spirit in 97 and 98. And for me, that, though I'm not a lot for awards, you can ask Isaac, all my medals and plaques are not even hung up. They're in a box somewhere put off to the side. It was just the recognition of being able to do that and to be the section leader for the drum line in 98 was just a huge honor. And so, yeah, I have a lot of great memories of when I marched. I'm 43, so now they're starting to fade a little bit. So I have to tell you guys so I can watch this again, But no, yeah, it's definitely experienced my life. Would not be the same had I not, joined that drum line in my junior year,
Right. I was wondering if, since you're seeing your son grow up doing the same marching band stuff that you went through, do you see any big similarities or differences about the experiences he's going through in his marching band?
Yeah, actually, I'll tell you this. We actually had the same instructor.
Really?
Yeah, my marching instructor at Suncoast, and I think he came out at Spirit for a couple of times, was Johnny Zolo. And it's funny actually to see him teaching my son as well. Mm-hmm. And, the great thing about that is, to know that I was not really on Johnny's radar, because if he doesn't really talk to you a lot, that means it's a good thing. And to see my son doing so well with him as well, I mean, I hope he is. I mean, Johnny hasn't screamed or yelled at me for it. So, it's awesome to be able to see that, and to be able to see my son hustle to his spot, or to run to get water and run back. Those are things in drum corps that really, drum corps in high school don't change. When you were in high school, it's like our drum line always made sure that we were the first ones back once we got water. And to be able to hear Gavin and Isaac and, other people on the field and be like, we got to be back first, blah, blah, blah. Those things have never changed. I don't think that'll ever change. It's that to me is awesome. Now, watching the props and the evolution of that, and seeing these big massive things, we didn't have to deal with this stuff. So me being a prop dad, going in and helping out and moving things around and stuff like that, and still being close to be able to watch the performers is unbelievable. But that is definitely something that's very different from when I marched to when, you know, you guys are marching with props and things to kind of enhance the show. That's another thing about drum corps over the years and in high school over the years, being able to see that there's no props, telling the story within just the music and your feet alone, and then being able to see the movement change over the years to where you're telling the story and using the props. And it's like, if you don't know what the show is, then you have to be blind and deaf, I think, at some point, because, you know, you're not just hearing it, you're seeing it visually with the movement, you're seeing it with the props, and then you're hearing it with the music. I mean, it's definitely been incredible. But yeah, I mean, there are some little things that are similar, and there are some that are different. You know, I think, you know, marching bands and drum corps now have been able to, something that I've said a very long time when I used to teach and I used to instruct in marching band was, I told my drummers, I was like, look, we will only march for a half an hour, an hour, if we get everything that we need to get done within this time. And I think band directors and instructors have learned to kind of tweak it to where they can get as much out of somebody as they can within a shorter amount of time. And, you know, to be able to see that in marching band is just incredible. I know for Texas, they have no band camp, I'm pretty sure. I was told that they start when school starts. So to be able to put a show together when school starts and to be able to get as much out of your kids as you can is incredible for some of those Texas shows.
They have basic training, like a little bit of fundamental time before, but it's basically a lot of it's just in season.
Yeah, yeah. And that to me is incredible that they can do something like that in such a short amount of time. And I don't think we had that back in the day, or at least not everyone had developed that back in the day. So.
Right, that's super cool. Isaac, do you have any questions?
I do actually, but I want to go back to that. One of my favorite memories is going on to RP1 finals. My dad and my mom coming up to me before and just like saying good luck. Like that's one of my favorite things. Is like get to see them before every performance, and then like just like even hear all the stories that he's told me about performing, and then Johnny and everybody else. Like I think that's really cool that I get to see them like before I go out to perform for BOA. Even though obviously my mom and dad never got to do that, I have the privilege to do that now. So my question is, what was your favorite memory from teaching?
Oh, favorite memory from teaching. The year we won FNBC percussion, outstanding percussion for our division, which I think was Division 2 or 3, one of the two, and we were at FBA in Clearwater with my drum line, and I was working with the kids, and we were, you know, all we were doing was warming up. We got done, we started getting into the show music, and they started playing. And I had been working with this line for at least 3 or 4 years, trying to develop it to obviously be the best it can be. And there's just this one long roll part that the kids have been getting close. But if you're a drummer, you know, it's kind of the same thing with horn instruments, I'm assuming, and woodwind instruments. When everything kind of lines up perfectly, it magnifies the sound. And with my drum line at FBA, we were going through this last segment, and it was a long drum roll. I forgot how many measures, but I think it was like 2, 3, 4 measures, something like that. And they hit it. And it sang. I had never heard anything like it before, other than in drum corps, where when you do that, when you play with somebody and you know next to somebody and you're playing solid, it magnifies. Well, they hit it, and it started singing. And one of my buddies, Sean Phillips, who was teaching another drum line, I think he was teaching Clearwater at that time, was walking around the corner, and his eyes and his mouth just dropped open. And I did the same thing, and I just looked at him, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was incredible. It was like being on cloud 9, because you knew that something you'd been working on for years had finally just gotten to that next level. And it was like, okay, well, where do we go from here? And I guess that's some of my best experiences or most favorite memories was teaching was, you know, you get to that one level and it's like, can we get to the next one? Then you get to the next one. You're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Can we get to the next one? And you know, another favorite of mine was when they finally. I had started a winter drum line, and we did it as an exhibition for 2 years at Countryside, and that was because FFCC was like, no, we're not doing winter drum line. So we actually went to Fort Myers, there was an organization doing winter drum lines, and would allow you to actually just go out for exhibitions. And I don't know if this is a favorite memory, but this is a memory that will always stick to me. I went and got an oil change because I knew I had to drive my truck to the Fort Myers, which is quite a ways away. I'm driving down 19. A car comes across, hits me, sideswipes me, and I have to be at school in 30 minutes to start going to Fort Myers for us to be able to do an exhibition. And so I'm on the phone. The police come. A guy saw it. He was a undercover cop. He's like, I will tell them that it wasn't your fault. It was the other guys. Blah 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 blah. So anyway, we get done. I'm driving to the school. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. They're looking at me like, what's wrong? My truck is wrecked, and I'm tuning drums so we can put them into the truck so we can get to the school. And I remember it being so hectic, but I remember once we got to the school, once we got the floor out, once the show got there, it was our first performance, playing on trash cans and everything else. I could have not been prouder. It was probably the dirtiest, nastiest sounding show ever, but I just couldn't be any prouder that I got my group there, and that my group just went out and performed and did what they were supposed to do at that time.
You can, if you have another one, you can go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't have another one, but I mean, that's like, I'm sure.
You have one question for me? That's it?
Oh,
I
fine.
can
I'll ask one.
And I'm sure I've asked you before.
Gotcha.
I'm sure when Gavin and I start teaching, or if we teach, depending on how our kind of lives go, that's like the same thing you were saying, like getting to that next level each time, and like just kind of pushing your group to be better and better. I'm sure that's, I mean, for almost any director, is going to be one of their favorite parts.
Yeah, definitely. I will also say that one of my favorite memories is when I was teaching winter drumline. I mean, I have some horrible memories, believe me. I have kids that got expelled and our show really couldn't go on. It didn't make sense because 4 of our kids got expelled for giving chocolate laxatives to somebody else, another band. So that was a horrible experience. But one of my other favorite experiences was you as a child, like, I don't know how, like 3-4 years old with your little drum on, marching with the drum line as they were doing the winter drum line practice. So that's obviously one that, I'm very fond of as well, and will remember, you doing that. And I knew you were going to be a marching guy because of that. You were going to get into it eventually. So.
So I have one last question for me, at least. So we talked about it before, so I warned you with it. So obviously, tell the part that you can. I think you should enlighten these other judges about the Shako story.
Oh.
Just the part you can, obviously.
Okay. Well, let me tell you another story before I tell you that one. Okay. So it was 94, and I will say in 94 we were. You can talk about your parents not being there. When you have a staff that really just does their job and kind of walks away, and you're not really being watched as well. You have a tendency to make some bad decisions. Well, we had a drummer. I think he was a snare drummer at the time. Funny guy. So funny that he decided to go ahead and steal one of the drum judges' hats. Yeah. So not very smart at all. And we didn't know he was going to do this. But there's this one famous drum judge, and I can't remember what his name is, but he has this hat that he wears everywhere. And I mean everywhere. He had it for years.
Oh.
And so we're putting drums away. We got done performing. We're putting them all away. And all of a sudden I see this guy flying out to the side, just running like crazy. And then he goes by the judge, snatches his hat, and then just books it. I mean, it just goes. And we had no idea who it was. I honestly didn't know it was him. None of us did until we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And I'm trying to figure out what had happened and why we're not going to our next show site. And they're like, well, we have to pick up somebody. I'm like, well, who are we picking up? And they're like, we'll let you know. So the bus moves. We go down 3 or 4 blocks, and it was our snare drummer coming on with the hat underneath his shirt. And we about lost it. I mean, we laughed and laughed and laughed that day. So not the greatest.
Did he ever get caught?
No, never got caught at all.
Props to him for that, honestly. Not the hardest thing, but you got away with it. Don't
do that.
Thing,
but if let's say he didn't, I mean, that would have put our core in jeopardy, I would think. Yeah, so probably not the best thing, but so in 98, I'm sure most of you guys know when, during drum corps, after you perform and everybody's done, you go to a critique. At least our staff did. Well, we started getting to the point where somebody thought it would be a good idea that anytime they said spirit, our plumes, we would shake our plumes. So not the smartest thing. And it started to be kind of funny, and we started going from show to show, and then we would go to retreats, and then eventually the entire corps was shaking their plumes every time they would say spirit or they announced something, and you would hear everybody in the crowd laughing. Well, one night there wasn't critique, and our corps director saw it, and I will say that he was livid, the fact that we did it, and I can understand at that point that it would not be funny, even though I thought it was funny at that time. But I can understand as a past instructor, probably not the greatest thing to look. You're not looking professional at all when you have 150 people shaking their plumes at the same time. So that was. Is that good, Gavin? Was that the story you wanted to hear?
That is so perfect.
I do have one question, actually, now that I think about it.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on, obviously you have groups like Carmel with, their uniform. You have groups that maintain that traditional uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Tarpon does the same thing, relatively, without, the differing skirts and shaker reps and everything.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, costumes specific to the show and, uniforms specific to the show?
That's a great question. I'm trying to remember the first costume I saw, and I can't honestly remember who it was.
I have my favorites.
What's yours? I'd be interested in hearing yours.
Well, personally for me, because I haven't been in drum corps yet, but I've watched shows. But BOA specifically for me, it's a tie. Actually, you know what? Okay, so BOA for me is Broken Arrow from 2015.
Okay.
And then drum corps, it would have to be the Valkyrie costumes from the Crossman this year.
Yeah.
I love Viking theme shows, but those are so cool.
It's tough. Even when you change a uniform, like Blue Devils does it every so often. I mean, they'll change throughout, and it's kind of a different style and things like that. And I'm trying to remember. I think '94 was a new style as well. I remember one of my instructors marching Blue Devils. He only got to march 1 year, and they changed the uniform, and he was kind of devastated because of it.
Right.
Spirit, we changed our uniform. In '97, we changed our uniform, and I loved it. It was new. It was different. Right. I don't mind the costume changes so much. Changing it up a little bit. But I will say, when you look at the ones that for the most part keep the style the same, when you look at Santa Clara and they change it up, for a show, it's like, wow, that's really, really awesome. But then you look at a Cavaliers and you're like, man, that uniform still looks sweet, and there's things about that. I mean, I don't really mind it. I actually think it's fine. I think it's great that they do it, only because you're adding to the show.
Right.
I will be honest to say, Tarpon show last year, I loved their show. I thought it was. I told Isaac it's the most entertaining show I've ever seen from Tarpon myself. And I would have loved if they got rid of the Shakos and did something a little different with it. Maybe not change the uniform, but just, change it up with the Shakos, take those off, do something a little different design-wise. And I can say there's other shows that I felt the same way about, but I think if you're going to evolve, in drum corps, you're going to have to change certain things. I think historically, I don't. Trying to think, historically, the uniforms changing themselves. Like, I think you need to. I mean, it just has to happen. I don't think you can just.
There's certain demands of the activity that are evolved.
Yeah. I mean, look at it. I mean, when I marched in Suncoast, they were old, heavy cadet uniforms that we got from a cadet school somewhere. I forgot where it was, but it was some Army cadet or Navy cadet school or something like that, or military school, and they gave them to us, and we took them. And I will tell you, they were the hottest, nastiest smelling uniforms you've ever had in your life. And then you get these uniforms like I was talking to one of the age outs from Spirit last year when we went to the Atlanta show, and I got to see his uniform, and I'm like, dude, that's got to be so breathable. It's got to be so light, And, if I had had that back in the day, I mean, I would have been like, woohoo, yeah, run me around too, that's fine. So, I mean, yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's great. I mean, you're still performing. You're making the show better. You're adding some brightness. But I will say, some of these color guard uniforms, they really got to watch out for because they are weird, man. They are very strange. So.
Yeah, I can relate. There's a couple color guard uniforms that I'm just like, oh, that okay.
I just think you need to find something that flatters everybody in the Corps. You know what I mean? It's just what you got to do.
That's a challenge, though. Yeah, for
sure. Well, I think we're gonna call it a podcast. James, I appreciate you coming on, and no problem. I'll probably see you. I think Isaac, as soon as he sees you get home, he'll see you. So, and
I appreciate you letting an old guy come in and talk for a little bit, and I hope it was entertaining for you guys in some way. I will just say this real quick. Favorite shows, I did write them down because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss any. Star 93, Cadets 1987, Phantom 96, Cavaliers 95, Planets, Bluecoats 2016, and Suncoast 85. And I'm sure there's others, but those are the ones that I wanted to let you know that were my
awesome.
Okay, nice. Well, thanks again. I enjoyed having you on. I'm pretty sure all the other hosts did as well. And
that was awesome.
We'll start ending it here. So that's a week there. So you can join us tomorrow with Fun Time Sunday for. Oh wait, no, it's not Fun Time Sunday because it's DCI Fight Week next week. Join us tomorrow for my top 4, and then we'll go through the week talking about our top 4s and then rank them. Maybe we'll. I think some of James are included on there, aren't they? I think we have 93 and 2016 Bluecoats on
93.
Yep.
And I think we have Cadets 2000.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, Cadets 2000. The other one also.
Yes.
Okay, well, if you guys are interested, join us next week for DCI Fight Week, and then after that, we'll continue with the normal weekly schedule. So thanks, James, again, and that's a wrap.